Hello, I'm Craig, and welcome to another episode of Football Kit Memories, the football podcast that gets under the shirt. In today's episode, I am joined by Chief Football Writer at the iPaper, Daniel Storey. In our chat, we cover Daniel's unusual route into football writing, where he sees the role of newspaper-based football journalism, and we cover the new book he's written with the FA on the history of the England national football team. Later, and as always, I asked Daniel, himself an avid football shirt collector, to pick out three of his favourites and tell me a little bit more about what they mean to him. There's a third-placed Premier League Nottingham Forest away shirt from the 90s, the 1980s NASL shirt that first inspired Daniel to start collecting, and we finished in Italy with a Fabio Cappello Scudetto winning Milan shirt from 92-93. Remember, you can listen to this and other episodes of Football Kit Memories on all major audio platforms including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please do like, follow, share, but above all, please do enjoy the podcast. Okay, so today on the podcast, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the Chief Football Writer for the newspaper. It's Mr. Daniel Storey. How are you, Daniel?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me.
Mate, thanks so much for being here. I really do appreciate you taking the time. You're a very busy man, and it's going to be great to chat. So thanks a lot.
No, it's great. Always a pleasure to talk about football kits anyway.
Yeah, everybody seems to feel the same way. They hold that special thing for people. So, mate, I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about your career. So, as I said, you're the Chief Football Writer at the newspaper. That paper used to be, it was a spin-off of The Independent, but it is now independent, I guess, for want of a better word. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, pretty much. The Independent was website and print, and when the print edition of The Independent stopped and just became website only, the I kind of formed out of that, and for a while they kind of shared content a bit, and now they are, as you say, completely separate. Obviously both have websites, and the I has the print edition.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, would I be right in saying it's like broadsheet quality journalism in a sort of a smaller, more compact tabloid format, print-wise?
Yeah, I think that's the pretty much the sell. I think, yeah. I mean, in terms of the news stuff, it is quite bite-sized. You know, they have very in-depth stuff, but then it's built around kind of bite-sized news stories. The sport is, I think, well, it's almost unrecognizable in terms of outlook and format of any newspaper, any tabloid newspaper, really. You know, I'm writing kind of 850 word match report, so that isn't bite size, which is right. Nice, because I'm a waffler if nothing else. But yeah, and they do, because they're reasonably new. They kind of, it feels as, I mean I'm quite new there, but it feels as a relative newcomer that there's kind of scope to do what you want. Don't feel that you have to kind of, obviously we cover the biggest games, but you can kind of wander off and do other things as well, which is nice.
That's interesting. So it's trying to deliberately do something different. It's trying to stand out in the market then.
Yeah, I mean, it's in an interesting position in that clearly print sales are still big news, but it's trying to build up that digital profile, which, as I say, is a reasonably new website, and then that loyalty takes time to build. But yeah, I think the way to do that is to, firstly with quality, but also not necessarily write the kind of the pieces that everyone else are writing and you're having to fight for competition for. So right. Yeah, they've let me do some kind of longer read stuff and kind of, you know, 2,500 word stuff that maybe feels like it's a bit more timeless and got a bit more value to it.
Nice. I was going to ask you about that. So it's not just kind of a focus for you in your role in kind of English football. You do write kind of longer form pieces on European football and other stuff as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically every time I've gone abroad for a Champions League game, it makes total sense for me, partly because I've been caged up for 18 months and partly because, you know, it gives the paper some value out of paying for my trip to try and, you know, do something else. So I did PSG City and did a piece on Red Star, this kind of more independent Parisian club. I went to Spain for Atletico Liverpool last week and did Barca the next night and Betis on the Thursday. So there'll be a piece coming out on Betis. And yeah, it makes, I'm a football obsessive. I love going to games. So if I can do 3 games in 3 days rather than 1 in 1, I'd much rather do that.
Fantastic. So the paper's getting more bang for its buck and you get more games in. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we all win. That's the aim, hopefully.
So, Daniel, I've heard you talk on other podcasts about how your route into football writing was slightly different in that you didn't study at university journalism specifically. Is that right?
Yeah, I did an accounting and law degree at at Manchester, which I mean, I've said this many times before, but the only thing it taught me is I didn't really want to be an accountant or a lawyer. And then just got a kind of run-of-the-mill office job, but wanted to save some money up to go and watch football abroad. And I think that's 2009. I went to South Africa and kind of watched some football in South Africa. And I wanted to go and see the stadiums ahead of the World Cup the year before, the year after. And then I flew to Egypt and then to Greece and did kind of 13 countries in Europe watching football around there over a few months. And at that point, I had no intention of turning that into a job or even a blog. But when I got back, I kind of got the buzz, and because I was living with mates and working in an office job, I was like, I can give this a go. And I was very lucky that, it immediately became very, very competitive, I think, to make that leap from, just blogging and doing bits of work to suddenly being able to make something of it. And I mean, I was very, very fortunate.
Well, I'm guessing though as well, it's through the hard work, because you did a hell of a lot of freelance work as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was, yes, I guess I am hardworking. It also comes out of a kind of fear of turning down work, in that I was freelance and then I got a job and then I went back to freelance and now I've got a full-time job again. And whenever I was freelance, I was just, you have this kind of notion that you're going to say, if you say no once to one editor, then the whole industry will kind of shut its doors to you and you'll never have any work again, which is not true, but it is probably a reasonably healthy attitude to have, in that it kind of keeps you working. And look, I was never, I've not been sent down the mines to work. This is an incredibly lucky job to have, and therefore the least I should do, to my mind, is try and make the most of it.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, competition must be so fierce. And I think even more so nowadays with kind of fan media and things too. There must be so many people that want to do your job. I wondered, in terms of what you do in your current role at the moment, are you constrained to just write for the iPaper, or are you able to kind of do freelance with that too?
They're brilliant about letting me do the Totally show, which is I guess is I'm introduced as chief football writer of the iPaper, and therefore there's a kind of PR sell to it, because it gets thousands of listeners that maybe haven't read the I regularly. So I think it works for both parties. I don't write for anyone else, but to be honest, there really isn't the time. I'm probably writing 6, 7, 8 pieces a week for the Eye, and kind of trying to plan things down the line and plan trips away and how we can work to kind of maximize the budget. So yeah, it's pretty full on anyway, I think.
It's a nice segue there, the Totally Football show. I wanted to ask you about working there. It always just strikes me that you guys have so much fun recording those episodes. It just seems like a really great place to be and talk football.
Yeah, and James is the absolute professional at kind of making people feel comfortable on the show, but also kind of drawing. James likes football, but he isn't football obsessed, and therefore it gives him a kind of maybe sideways glance or a slightly sort of different view on it, where it doesn't always have to be deadly serious all the time. It doesn't always have to be. We will talk about managers that might need to get sacked, and we'll talk about clubs in crisis, and we'll talk about serious issues when, for example, let's say a Newcastle takeover. But we can also agree that most people take football in as an escape and as a pursuit and for fun, rather than for deadly serious reasons.
Yeah. What is your kind of pun capability? Do you think you could ever take him on with the jokes?
I think my problem is that because I've got used to being a writer, I generally think of the jokes about 10 minutes after the show's finished rather than 10 minutes before. But that's the cross I'll have to bear it.
Is he pre-writing those, I wonder? Does he keep those on a list ready to go?
His intros are written by him and are brilliant, and he is far quicker than I would be. So I suspect those intros take about 1/10 of the time they take me to do.
Interesting. Slightly little peek behind the curtain there. I like it. So I wanted to ask you about podcasting and writing. I wondered, obviously, in the space for kind of the fight for share of voice and things, and you mentioned about print journalism, and it's a real kind of fight at the moment in that industry. How do the two sit together? Do you think kind of a football news podcast like the Totally Show can sit well with the print journalism as well, or do you think the two are kind of eating into each other's audiences?
I hope that there's room for both, because I think football probably more than most things. Maybe music is the obvious equivalent, in that people are prepared to listen to music or watch football. They're prepared to read about music. and read about football. They're prepared to,
Mm.
hear people's takes on things. So I think people are prepared to take their football information through different mediums. I think that helps. And also we should remember that I'm talking about football I've watched generally, but it's a low percentage of people in this country that have Sky Sports and BT and watch 3 or 4 games a weekend. So for some people, we're not just regurgitating what's happened or offering opinions on it. We're actually offering some insight into what's happened, which is good.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the industry in general is still paying the price for the fact that nobody particularly spotted how successful the internet would be 20-25 years ago. So it decided to give away its product for free online and not in print. And that's a very hard sell as soon as you start doing that, either to make people keep paying for print or to start charging people for online, because people are used to having it for free. And I can't really think of any other equivalent that you get for absolutely free than football writing than the quality of football writing you can get online, or sports writing online for free. Doesn't really equate. Something like Spotify might bleed that industry dry, but you are still paying a fee at least. Football writing is pretty much free across the board. The website's free, the BBC's free, the Guardian's free, and even within those 3 things, there is such a breadth and depth of quality that you just don't get any other product like that for free.
That's a really interesting point. Yeah, it's a real kind of fight for share of voice, like we say, and the stuff you have to put out has to be quality. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it does. And I do think, this kind of rise of fan media, some people are kind of quite anti it, but I think it's, if it democratizes the industry, that has to be a good thing. If it allows different voices that, if print journalism is guilty of one thing, it's that, a lot of people look and sound like me.
Right.
And if that gives a democratization to other voices, either in other countries or from other backgrounds to mine, then that has to be a good thing, because there's only so many times, someone like me will write an article like someone like me. I might not see things in a different way, or I might not say something that is, speaks to people 10 years younger than me. I mean, I'm only, I'm 35, but I'm not 25 and I'm not 18, and therefore how I write and how I talk and how I deliver things might be, different to how people want to do it. So as long as there's interest in things, and as long as people are doing it, for the right reasons, then I think all power to that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So Daniel, you've written 3 books, right? I wanted to ask you, so obviously 2 books, the Gaza in Italy book and the 250 Days, which is a book about Cantona's Kung Fu Kick and the transformation of Manchester United. And you've just published a new book about the history of the England football team in conjunction with the FA. Yeah. Before we talk about that, I just wanted to ask you around the process for you writing a book versus writing an article. Is it much the same kind of thoughts that go into it, or is it a totally different thing?
It's different, but it's kind of complementary. I mean, I wrote that when I was still a freelancer, and my big fear as a freelancer is that I would become, or one could become, this kind of professional big opinions haver on the Premier League. Okay. And the issue is that things change so quickly that your opinion has to shift so quickly, and suddenly you just become, as I say, this kind of reactionary opinions haver, and that is the last thing I'd want to be.
Okay.
So actually having a project that sits underneath that you could say, right, 3 hours today or for a whole day tomorrow, I'm just going to work on the book, is pretty cleansing for the soul. I mean, I got paid to do it, obviously, but it was one of those things that was a pleasure to do, because it gives a bit more structure to that freelance life. So you're not just writing about which manager or which club's in trouble this week. And yeah, I mean, the book is a kind of coffee table book with a huge amount of really high quality photos in from the FA's archive.
Oh, wow.
Mostly. So it was great to be able to write words that I knew would fit around certain photos, and then we'd work on which photos we were going to use. And that kind of thing is, that's as far away from writing a 600, 700 word column on Man United as I could get in my job. And it's really, really nice to do as well.
So how did that all come about? Did the FA commission you to write the piece?
No, the FA commissioned the publishing houses as Welbeck Publishers, and I mean, completely out of the blue. Literally, I got an email from a guy at Welbeck Publishing, their commissioning editor. He kind of said, I like your work. He knew I was freelance, and I suppose the difficulty is that a lot of people have full-time jobs, and therefore either would have to take a sabbatical or I would have to do it in their spare time. And I don't have kids, for example, so I can afford to work evenings if I need to.
Right.
So I think it just maybe fit that profile for them. And I was very thankful they had, because quite often with a book, these things are very rushed, whereas they had, we had a 2 or 3 months to do it. So it didn't have to be rushed. It could be done at kind of my own pace when I had the time, which, it was a real honor. It really was. And obviously, the book ends with Euro 2020 in 2021. And it would have been lovely to have England win the final and that'd be the perfect end. But I think the performance of the England team and the way that the players within that squad have kind of risen up as cultural leaders is a really nice, for me, was a really nice ending to the book.
That's a very interesting point. Do you know what? I'm actually a Scotland fan, and I was really torn for the whole tournament because they're such a great bunch of guys, great professionals, doing the, like kind of in the face of a lot of criticism that is very wrong kind of thing as well. These guys are really standing up for equality and things, and yet I'm a Scotland fan. I didn't want them to win. So.
You can like the players. You don't have to like the team, do you?
Exactly. But no, that sounds really interesting. So that book's out now at the moment, right?
Yeah, that's out in all the usual places. I'd obviously urge people to try and buy it from independent bookshops. But yes, it's on the non-independent big sellers as well. So yes, that's out now.
Lovely stuff, mate. Lovely stuff. So, Daniel, let's talk about some football shirts, shall we? The question I ask everybody on the podcast is, what do football shirts mean to you?
Well, I don't think you know this yet, but I collect football shirts. So I've got about 430 football shirts in, like, I buy these, you get these big, they look like kind of suitcases, but they're really thin and flat from online, and you can get about 70 or 80 shirts in them. So I've just got a wardrobe with them kind of piled on top of each other.
Wow.
Which started, basically, I collect football shirts and I collect football books, or sports books it is now, because when I started freelancing, it was literally 1 week I was doing an office job and then it was, let's give this a go. And I thought, when I make money, I'm going to spend a percentage of the disposable income I have, which wasn't very much at the time, on kind of hard copies of things. So if this all goes tits up in a year, at least I've got something, I can look at that and go, well, I've got that to show for it. And, I love football anyway, so I would always like having shirts or like having books. So it kind of fit.
Yeah.
And I carried on doing that. So I've got sort of 700-800 sports books and 300 and 400 football shirts.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, my partner is kind of, you've made your point now. It's not going away yet. You can stop buying this stuff. But the problem is that, they keep bringing them out, and they keep bringing out the books, and they keep bringing out the shirts, and you get kind of transfixed into them, like a classic football shirts sort of doom scroll every week, where you persuade yourself you need the thing you definitely don't need.
Yeah. So typically, are you buying like new stuff, or are you buying vintage stuff?
I've got a few vintage things, but mainly it's quantity rather than quality, if I'm honest. Basically, I'm a kind of organizational nerd, so I've got a spreadsheet of shirts, and the aim is basically to buy a club shirt from every country in the world, or every country in FIFA.
Right.
So I'm up to about 130 or 140 countries. So I just, there are a few sites I use that, just have a scroll at the new stuff and see if there's anything. I mean, I know the guys at Classic Football Shirts now, so that helps. They can kind of give me a heads up on stuff, but it is mainly, if I'm honest, it's mainly quantity rather than quality. So there's a few kind of outrageous designs. There's designs I like, and then there's a kind of lot of Bundesliga and La Liga and Portuguese League and French League kits in there.
Love it, mate. Fantastic. Well, let's talk about your first choice then. So this is the Nottingham Forest away shirt from 94-95 by Umbro. Tell me more.
I mean, as a Forest fan, I would probably be cursed by my fellow breed that I've gone for the kind of blue and odd green away kit rather than the red and white, which should be the natural choice. And the Labatt's home shirt from that season was really nice, but for some reason the away shirt is the one that kind of stuck in my mind. It was a kind of Collymore doing silly things. We won at Old Trafford that season. We won 7-1 at Sheffield Wednesday in that. It was the away days that I remember. I mean, I was 8 and 9 years old, didn't go to many, but I do remember that blue kit sticking out. I think because it was new and red and white had always been Forest. And when I started going in, 91, 92 to now, so it's the away kits that always stuck out a bit more. And for Forest fans, it's a kind of, if that season hadn't been successful, I suspect that kit would be kind of love-hate. But Forest had got promoted and finished third in the Premier League in that kit. And I mean, you don't need me to tell you that's a world away from wherever we've been since. So it holds those kind of nostalgic memories for fans as well, I think.
Do you get down to Forest much nowadays?
When I can, not as much as I'd like. I mean, to repeat what I said earlier, I'm very lucky to be doing what I'm doing, and I would never moan. But I guess that's one of the downsides, is that I don't get there on a Saturday as much as I'd like. There are still occasions, but it's mainly consuming it kind of as when I was a very young kid, which is through the radio. So no, I don't get down. I mean, I probably saw them 4 or 5 times last season, which is basically 10% as much as I'd like, because if I wasn't a writer, I would go every week.
Right. It's been a long time, as you said. It's kind of a golf away from where it was then to where it is now at Forest. I mean, you must get asked this all the time, the typical kind of style, the sleeping giants in that league, etc. How far away from the Premier League do you think they are?
It's difficult to know, because I'm kind of hardwired to think we're a long way away, which is certainly true in terms of our recent history and our not so recent history. They're a club who have, I think there was an accidental arrogance for a long time at the club that reflects exactly what you say, which is, we are a sleeping giant. We were a big club, so why aren't we in the Premier League? But the reality is, if you look at clubs that have done it, this season, the obvious example being Brentford, it's clubs that do things the right way. It's things that they build sustainably for the long term. And Forest have just had this kind of short-termist obsession that, huge turnover of players, huge turnover of managers, in search of this kind of miracle formula, which doesn't exist unless you commit to it.
Right.
But having said that, it's quite feasible that eventually we land upon the right manager and suddenly zoom up the league, and everyone thinks, well, this is all we're waiting for. So having made so many appointments, I can kind of see why they're just carrying on doing it until they hopefully find Mr. Right.
Okay. Well, fingers crossed for you, mate. One day, as you say, it's this a club with so much history in English football. It's a shame not to have them in the top league, I always think, for the marketing and for the brand of the league itself around the world, in my opinion. Yeah. There you go. So I had to really look this second one up. I had no idea about this shirt. This is proper niche. So this is Montreal Manic from 1981. Yeah. It's an NASL shirt. I'm not sure who the brand is. I couldn't find out who made it.
No, it's a good question. It's really hard now to find the old version of the shirt, because the new ones, like Copper have made a version of the shirt you can buy, kind of new brand. But I mean, it's. I agree with you. It's pretty niche. I just think it's such an amazing retro design. I mean, anyone listening to this, go and look it up, because it's kind of garish, but it's also white base. And of the however many kits I've got, probably half of them are white. I love white shirts.
Right. Okay.
I just think if you have a white base, you can do something a bit. You can either have something incredibly simple and effective, like the kind of Marseille Adidas shirts, the 93, or you can go a bit garish like this, and it's got a big logo, it's got big numbers, it's got the kind of this kind of 4 lines red and white sort of sash, but it's kind of low hanging sash. Yeah. And there's too many things on there, but I think because it's white, you kind of get away with it. And it's very of its time. It's very American Soccer League, but yeah, I'm a big fan.
Do you have some kind of affiliation to the team or Montreal itself, or you just like the design?
No, I mean, the kind of mushy answer would probably be that this was the kit that made me decide to start collecting football kits, which I think is probably a half truth. It's probably slightly romantic nostalgia. I'm sure it wasn't quite that straightforward, but I've always loved it, and therefore and I've always loved white kits. So I think maybe there is a degree of truth to that.
Right. Very
And I
nice.
need to, and I still haven't managed to find an original copy. I've got the copper one, the kind of remake of it, which
Yeah.
is exactly the right design. But I'd love to find an original.
So typically, are all of your shirts kind of stored away, or do you actually wear them? Do you use them to play football in or anything?
Yeah, I use them basically. I mean, I use them to play five-a-side in and to go running in, which
Right.
neither of which happens as much as I'd like. But other than that, but because I have these kind of storage things and I've got enough, there's probably only kind of 20 or 30 on rotation. So the
Right.
ones that I really like don't come out. I've got they're all in, as I say, these cases, and then they're in like shirt bags, the sort of clear cellophane shirt bags. So they're all stored away for a rainy day that will clearly never come, but that's fine. I can live with that.
Wow, mate, sounds interesting. So look, your final shirt choice is this one's a bit of a classic. People know this one a lot more. So this is AC Milan 92-93 by Adidas. It's the one with the Motta sponsor.
Yeah, it's just I as I say, I'm 35. There are people who are 5 years younger than me, up to 5 or 10 years older than me, who, if they didn't grow up on Gazzetta Football Italia and Football Italia Sundays, then they at least form part of their kind of cultural awakening to football outside of England. And so I would, if I was picking 3 shirts, and to be honest, if I was picking one, I would pick a Serie A shirt from that era, because it did just open your eyes to different football, to kind of, whether it's Il Fenomeno Ronaldo, whether it's Batistuta, whether it's George Weah, whether any of those, Baggio. And yeah, this Milan shirt I think is the best of the best. The only other one I was considering picking is that there's a white, obviously, Roma away shirt, which is the Marseille kind of shoulder 3-stripe design. That's up there. But the Milan one is just, it's not even that the shirt is particularly, it's not a flamboyant design. It's not, I don't even think it's necessarily on its own a particularly attractive kit. It's just completely iconic. It's everything that those times, it's Marco van Basten, and it's Rijkaard. It's just all of those players who kind of taught me that there was football outside NG2 in Nottingham.
Do you know, I mean, look, I've done over 60 episodes now, and a lot of people, especially men, I'm 35 too, a lot of men our age that I've spoken to say the same thing about Football Italia, about how iconic it was and how much of an imprint it's had on their own kind of, relationship with football, I guess.
Yeah.
Working with James so closely, who hosted Football Italia obviously in the 90s, is he aware of that kind of impact that he had, and do you speak to him about it?
He's quite, I think he's quite shy about that. I mean, he will be completely blunt and say he kind of fell into that job. He wanted to be in Italy. He heard about the job. He went for it. He got it. He had no idea at that point, because Channel 4 had no idea at that point that it would become this kind of cultural pillar. Yeah. And I think he probably is quite shy about it. I suppose nobody wants to think that the thing they're most famous for happened a long time ago. So
good point.
I'm sure that's part of it. But he's also, as I say, he's not a football obsessive. And I think that's why he was so good at that job, in that he's meeting these famous people, and he was never, bowing down in front of them. He was never getting stage fright, because he was never, I'm sure some of them became, good friends or heroes, but that was never how it was introduced. It was introduced on a very, level playing field. And yeah, and for people of our age, it came at a time when foreign players were just going to be coming over here as well. So we had this kind of dual awakening of, we were watching people that we might watch down the road in 2 years' time, which is an incredibly exciting thing.
Yeah, fantastic. I wish Saturdays and Sundays were still the same. I wish I was still 8 and 9 years old sometimes. So look, Daniel, that's fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing your football kit memories with me. Your new book on the history of England national football team is out now. You can get that in all good bookstores.
You can.
And where can people find you on social?
I'm Daniel Storey 85 on Twitter. I mean, that I do Instagram, but it's just pictures of football grounds. So yeah, Twitter is fine. Thank you very much.
I mean, there's a niche for that as well, you know. So...
There is.
No, Daniel, it's been absolutely fantastic to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
So there you have it. Massive thanks to Daniel for sharing his football kit memories with me. Remember, you can follow me and my own collection on Instagram or get in touch via Twitter or email. Make sure you follow Daniel too on social and check out the 3 books he's written. The music you heard on the podcast was produced by Ed. You can check out his music on his Bandcamp page. There's links to absolutely everything I've mentioned there in the notes section. And finally, thanks to you for listening. If you have enjoyed it, please do spread the word, give me a follow on social, and subscribe to Football Kit Memories on your podcast player of choice. Sharing is caring. And other than that, I guess that's it. Until next time, I'll catch you later.